Welcome to the second session of the webinar series, Urban-Rural Linkages in the Time of COVID-19, Metropolitan Perspectives. My name is Camilo Romero. I'm based in Berlin, and I am part of the UN Habitat's Urban-Rural Linkages team. Our team belongs to the Policy, Legislation and Governance section of the Urban Practices branch at UN Habitat. I would like to thank you to my colleagues Eol Shae, Sun Lei, and Grace Gidiri, who are part of this team and supporting the organization of this webinar. Today, I'm going to be monitoring the chat box, reading your inputs, and transmitting your questions to our speakers and moderators. Rafael Forero will moderate this meeting. Rafael is a Metropolitan policy expert and part of the Policy, Legislation and Governance section of UN Habitat. In case of any technical issue, please choose me, Camilo Romero, as recipient in the chat box and drop me a message. Please make sure that your microphone is muted so we can avoid background noises. Thank you all for joining this webinar, and I wish you us a fruitful webinar. Please, Rafa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Camilo. Good day and good afternoon to everyone, wherever you be. Thank you for joining us to this second webinar on urban-rural linkages. Let me to start saying that this is a series or webinars that we are organizing from UN Habitat and with several international partners and friends. We had the first webinar 10 days ago, and we that was like a kickoff webinar to introduce this STEM and to start to speaking about what could be the relation and the importance between urban-rural linkages and the different ways to address this pandemic situation. We keep it, the analysis during the first webinar at the city proper scale. And we look at some cases, the case of Bogota, the case of New York, the case of Shenyang in China, to understand and to study how these cities are addressing the pandemic. This webinar, this second webinar, we will extend the analysis to the metropolitan level. And for that, we have several important speakers today. I would like to thank Dave for the participation today. We will have first Mr. Remy Sierchipin, the Chief of Policy, Legislation and Governance at UN Habitat. Also, we will have Ms. Leah Brum from Metropolis Observatory. Metropolis is this worldwide network on metropolitan areas and large cities. Thank you, Leah, for being here. But we also have several practitioners and metropolitan authorities who will bring their experience and the cases for the discussion. We have Mr. Mario Silva, the director of the Metropolitan Area of Guadalajara. We have also Gabriel Voisin-Fradin, the project manager for international economic relations and in Grenoble-Alpes Metropolis. And we have also a couple of discussants. We will bring more insights to this webinar. We have Mr. Edmundo Huerna, the senior level urbanist of the International Labour Organization. We have Juan David Palacio, the general director of the Metropolitan Area of Valle de Aburrá in Medellin, in Colombia. And we have also Wilson Kajom, urban planning specialist in Uganda. Welcome to everyone. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Remy Sierchipin to give us some insights about urban-rural linkages and metropolitan areas and the work that UN Habitat, our agency, is developing during the last year between these two subjects. So, Remy, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Rafa. Thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome to everybody to this important second webinar, which is part of the series we have started. We're going to continue. As some of you already know, UN Habitat is the UN agency that is mandated to work on and for all human settlements, of which metropolitan areas are part of it. Therefore, working on urban-rural linkages or urban-rural continuum is very much relevant and used as one of the approaches that we promote. We at UN Habitat use different strands, and some of the entry points have been the work we have been doing on metropolitan development, and therefore within the continuum of urban-rural linkages, it becomes very critical. And all our purpose is to work towards improving the quality of life, better well-being and health. Therefore, the connection between metropolitan areas, urban-rural linkages, and the health, the linkages are so natural to us. You will know, for those who have been who are familiar with the urban-rural linkages guiding principle, that the principle number 2 that deals with integrated governance state clearly that the horizontal integration across the scale of metropolitan regions, adjacent cities and towns, including rural areas, it should be part of the governance of that territory. So just to say that in the approach of urban rural linkages governance is really at this metropolitan areas, metropolitan regions are at the core. Again, if you look at the urban rural linkages guiding principle number 6 that deals with human rights, or number 7 that deals with do no harm, again, they place heart at the core of how to achieve such principle. Some of you are very much familiar that urban rural linkages is no longer a buzzword. The work that we have been doing on the guiding principle, the forum that some of you have attended, the resolution that member states are passing to encourage everyone to really embrace the territorial approach is part of that discourse. In the next webinar, we'll be discussing very much the context of small and intermediate cities, which is part of that continuum, again, in the context of health, in particular the COVID-19. Why we want to discuss today really how metropolitan areas are dealing with COVID-19, but within the understanding of urban rural linkages, one simple or one indicator would be, in fact, that many COVID-19 cases are in large or bigger metropolitan areas in almost all countries. So this is a way to really appreciate the role metropolitan areas play in that continuum of territory of urban rural linkages, but could actually be the problem and also the solution to health dimension. So I really would like to thank all of you for attending, for appreciating the nexus between metropolitan areas, health in the context of urban-rural continuum. My colleague Rafa Forero had already introduced the speakers that will be, sharing their perspective and present their appreciation of this issue. And he will now lead in the discussion, the presentations by the those who have volunteered to contribute. Rafa, all yours to get started.
Thank you, Remy. Thank you, and thank you, Camilo, for unmute me. Well, I would like to have these important insights that Remy just shared with us to show you this map. and to try to find a first relation between both subjects of we are discussing today, between metropolitan areas and urban-rural linkages. And let me say, and this will be polemic, but I want to motivate the debate. And I want to say that maybe the metropolitan scale is the most important one to managing and to find relations and to proper address urban-rural linkages, because a difference of a city proper scale and urban scale and other types or other kinds of urban settlements, metropolitan areas comprise both rural but also urban territories. So if not the most important one, definitely metropolitan areas and the metropolitan scale is a fundamental scale to address these relationships. Let me say that in recent studies from UN Habitat, this map you are saying today is new, is actually from yesterday, because we are making some analysis to the world urbanization prospect, as we are trying to characterize the metropolitan areas and the metropolises around the world, and we just found that there are almost 2,000 metropolises in the world, and among these 2,000 metropolis, almost 60% of the urban population lives. All is the same, a third part of the world's population. So I think, and we are just finding from UN Habitat that the metropolitan areas are the most common configuration of human settlements in the 21st century. So let me give this map. Let me introduce with this number, with the figures, to Mr. Mario Silva, the General Director of the Metropolitan Area of Guadalajara. Guadalajara is one important case in Latin America on metropolitan management and on integrative ways to governing and to planning and to finance a metropolis. Guadalajara is a medium size metropolis, 5 million inhabitants. But Mario, please tell us more about Guadalajara, and please show us how Guadalajara is addressing this pandemic situation currently.
Thank you, Rafael, and well, good morning and good afternoon for everybody. After the beginning of my presentation, I would like to say that Guadalajara is most known as the capital of the tequilas world. And in order of that idea, the linkage related with the production of food and other kind of products from the agriculture, it's very important for us, and it's part of our identity. And I totally agree with the sentence that Rafael said before. The most important challenge for the metropolis is how to create this link between the rural and urban connections. And we're trying to figure out how is the better ways to create this infrastructure, this framework of law, and also institutional actions to improve that. So, well, in order to present the case of Guadalajara, we prepare 3 lines of discussions. The first one is this, please, the next one. Sorry, if can thank you. Well, the next one also. The first one is this rural-urban composition of the metropolitan area of Guadalajara. As Rafael said, Guadalajara is the second largest Mexican conurbation after the megalopolis of Mexico City. The fact that the 9 municipalities are considered part of the metropolitan area does not mean that all of the territory is necessarily urban. This is an important thing because just the municipality of Guadalajara is 100% urban. Our metropolis comprise urban, semi-urban, and rural areas. And in terms of land uses, more than 300,000 hectares are of this land are on development, and the 22% from these hectares remaining are currently urbanized. That means of a big part of the metropolis has this potential to for agriculture and other kind of activities. And the inclusion of the municipality of Zapotlanejo into the Metropolis contributed significantly in the rise of the undeveloped land, being that of more than 72 total of the municipality, only mere 1% has been urbanized. So this is important because all the metropolis are changing constantly, and we are to adding new municipalities, not just for the urban process, more than the rural effects into the metropolis. Well, in this image, you can see what is the composition of our metropolis. So you can see that the municipality of Guadalajara, together with the municipality of Zapopan, has more than the half of the population in this city. Next one, please. One important conclusion is that the dominant use of land in the metropolis is agricultural. The metropolis has 39% of land being used for the purpose, while urbanized zones and human settlements and occupy 16% and 5% of land respectively, making up 22% of the metropolitan transformed land. The other important information is the metropolis has 20 urban settlements with 40.1 million inhabitants altogether, and 31 mixed settlements with more than almost 200,000 people living there, and more than 69 rural settlements with around more than 100,000 people living there. So in terms of activities in this rural profile, we have different points of production of different kinds of grains. The case, for instance, the municipality of Zapopan or Tlajomulco, there has a lot of agricultural production. And well, grass, poinsettia, maize, blackberry, peanuts. In the last 10 years, for instance, the production of berries is very important, not just for the metropolis, also for the state and even for the country. We are the first place in the country in terms of production of berries in the whole Mexico. So this is an important activity for us. Next one, please. So as you can see in this image, well, the main challenge is obviously the land use policies, also the urban sprawl, and also how we can change the dynamic for irregular settlements in the metropolis. You can see this data from 1990 to 2015. The built area in the metropolis doubled from more than 30,000 hectares to 72,000 hectares. So for that reason, we prepare a study and inventory for with the idea to understand this phenomena. And we prepared this study with one NGO called Techo. So in that case, some information that from this study, more than 100 irregular settlements in the metropolis that were interviewed, 60% of the community leaders mentioned that the previous use of land in their areas was agriculture. So we have two ways to change the land use. All of them are related with housing, but in that case is with irregular settlements, and well, this is a big change, a big problem for us. So the next one. So what is the linkages between urban and rural areas? Well, for us, the main problems in the case of the agricultural sector in the metropolis are three. The first one is the limited access to water resources. This is a problem in all Latin America, and I think this is the most common problems in big cities and urban areas and metropolis. The elevated cost of the necessary inputs and resources for agricultural production. This is the main challenge in this topic. The second problem is the low rentability of agricultural products, the negative cost-benefit relationship. Because, well, the paradox is all those settlements are close to the city and markets and change of consumption, but the price of these products, well, is not high, and all these families live under lines of poverty. And the third one is pressure put on by urban growth. Well, and I think in our case, we changed the agricultural fields for this kind of housing that is not very affordable and is not very nice or good place to be. Next one. So in that scenario, what we are doing, well, in our case, we create since 2014 this metropolitan governance model. In our case, IMEPLAN is the technical element of this model, but we have other three entities in the metropolitan level that approve, creates, decide, and put on implementation some public policies, not just related with urban policies. In that case, we trying to connect the urban policies with the rural profile of the metropolis, and also with our new plan related with climate change and food security. So you can see in this image that we have the metropolitan agencies for public services. We have the Metropolitan Coordination Board. This is our political entity that this is the maximum level to decision-making process. And also we have the Metropolitan Citizen Council. This is our participatory space for all the public audience. And in that case, we have people from these municipalities with a rural profile. And this is an important element because some decisions and public policies that the metropolis could be decided necessarily have to incorporate the public participation in order to create governance networks. So you can see also all the technical instruments and tools that we developed to create this metropolitan governance model. The next one, please. Well, no, yes, the next one. Is related with our metropolitan policies. We create three strategies and activities with the idea to have an integrated urban-rural approach. The first one is our Metropolitan Plan for Land Uses, known as POTMET. And we have in this technical and legal framework 4 lines of action. The first one is our strategy for the polycentric model of the city and the strengthening of the metropolitan structure. The holistic urban management, for instance, the water resource management. The strategic zones, as known as new sustainable urban settings. And also our green peri-urban system. In that case, we consider the agricultural areas as part of our green peri-urban system, because for us, the land use related with agriculture provides not just food, also provide environmental services. So in that order of ideas, for us is super important, this green peri-urban system. The second one is the strategy for the urban-rural linkages from the Metropolitan Development Program. This program contains all the public policies related with the strategic fields of action. For instance, economic development, and transition to clean energies, and so on, for mention some public policies. So in that case, we have cartographic studies and the diagnostic of the metropolitan area. For instance, the rural profile of the metropolis is part of this Metropolitan Development Program, and well, we developed this profile with the idea to support to the municipalities to decide better policies coordinated and articulated with the urban process of the metropolis also. So finally, the main strategies and municipal programs for the agricultural sector. We have 9 municipalities and 8 of them has areas specialized and related with rural production and agricultural issues. So we connect with our area of international cooperation in order to create some technical tools to support them. The next one, please. So, well, finally, the next one, please, Rafa. To the other side. That's exactly. So finally, one big issue for all the world now, this COVID-19, and we are the first metropolis in the country and also the states in the country that create and apply this plan Jalisco COVID-19. We put some strategies related with health, employment, security, and mental health also, with the idea to have a big response and a coordinated response to COVID-19. We have some elements like employment, and we have, for instance, the emerging program of people employment and salary protection. We have also the food security program Jalisco Without Hunger, Together for Nutrition, our program of mental health, Stay at Home, the communication plan. Also, we are trying to present the next week our strategy for the post-COVID-19. And during the pandemic, we create this medical connection. We provide a specialized transportation for medical employments and nurses and all these kind of people that works in the health sector. And well, we create a new hospital infrastructure to attend people with COVID-19. And we develop also our gender-based violence response with the idea to protect also children and women in situations of domestic violence. This is the state level, but also we have some public policies in the municipal level. Next one, please. This is the case of the metropolitan municipalities. For instance, in terms of employment, looking after your job from the municipality of Guadalajara, and also women's economic empowerment made by women. This is another specific public policy for women. Local economic development, we have 3 examples. The municipality of Tonalá Strong. This is aid for craft men and merchants that lives on formality. Zapotanejo, for instance, 100% forgiveness in fees for the payment of property taxes, construction and commercial licenses, water payments, and other type of municipal taxes. And the case of Tlaquepaque, they invest 12 million pesos toward family income support of upwards of 3,000 families. And also we have nutritional programs like 3,000 daily breakfasts in the case of the municipality of El Salto, and 2,000 pantry packages of the most needy in the case of Tlajomulco. And well, in the case of communication, more than 3,000 cell phone SIM cards with free internet for people to work from home in the case of the municipality of Zapopan. Next one, please. I think this is the last one. Well, to finalize my presentation, I would like to present this new action and governance arrangement. We are trying to identify the post-crisis recovery, and we are working this project, City Regional Approaches, Studies and Analysis about the Metropolitan Region, with the idea to have data and create a new mechanism of governance based on open data, with the idea to support the analysis after COVID and try to identify new ways to recover the new normality. And well, I hope to share in the future some final outcomes of this strategy. So I'm not sure if this is the last one. Yes, this is the final presentation. Well, thank you. I apologize. I think we have a short time to present a lot of ideas. And well, I hope that the example of Guadalajara helps to this discussion. And well, I'm here to the debate.
Thank you, Mario. This is an important case, not only in metropolitan management and governance, but also how a Latin American city and a Latin American metropolis is addressing the pandemic situation. And I think that this case helps to complement the information, the case that we presented last webinar, during the first webinar of this series, which was the case of Bogota. So we have now two examples on how Latin American cities and metropolis are addressing this conjunctural situation. So let me to share some logistical notes for all the participants. First, I would like to thank, we have more than 200 participants connected at the time. So thank you for being here. For those who just joined, please remember that we are analyzing the linkages between urban-rural linkages and metropolitan areas, and how metropolitan areas are addressing this pandemic situation, highlighting, of course, in urban-rural context. Also, I would like to say you that please, if you have some questions, share them by the chat. My colleague Camilo is attentive to receive all your questions, and maybe at the end of the webinar, if we have some time, we will try to address some of them. Also, my colleague Camilo is sharing in this moment some useful links to reference materials and to the presentation from the speakers for those who want to keep it, to download it, and to keep it for further analysis. I would like to continue with the speakers, please. Gabriel Voisin-Fradin, welcome. Gabriel from the Grenoble-Alpes Metropolis. Please, the floor is yours, and we are happy to have you here.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Let me try to share my screen. That's it. So I will present you the case of Grenoble-Alpes Métropole. Just to show you where Grenoble is located, so in southeast of France, in the middle of the French Alps, and you can see in yellow the area of the metropolitan area. One word about the French territorial administrative organization. There are 4 levels out of the national state. The regions, 22 regions, and in blue we have the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, where Grenoble is located, then the department, almost 100 departments, and then we have almost more than 35,000 municipalities. So that's the reason why in 2014 the Metropolis were created to merge, well, not really merge, but to put together these municipalities. So you can see we have more than 20 metropolis in France, but then we have also communities and natural parks and various kind of intermediary organizations. So concretely, the Metropole of Grenoble is composed by 49 municipalities. The biggest one is the city of Grenoble with more than 150,000 inhabitants. Then there are some above 20,000 inhabitants, but almost half of the metropolitan area is composed by cities under 2,000 inhabitants. So it is in the same time urban in the center and rural in the rural. The Metropole is a local authority, so the representatives of the municipalities are part of the Metropolitan Council. Its attributions are quite numerous, and you can see them on the left-hand side. Then, concretely, the territory is composed by breeding areas in blue, farming areas in yellow, and forests in green, and the rest is the urban area. So you can see that it is quite diverse, and all around there are some very rural areas, 3 ranges of mountains organized in natural parks. So about the measure taken against the COVID-19, on the national level, almost like everywhere, there has been a general lockdown, social and an economic shutdown for all collective activities, such as schools, restaurants, and events. The closing of the borders, the requisition of all masks for medical use, the promotion of social distancing, and from the national state, strong economic support with liquidity facilities, the full financing of the partial unemployment, the delaying of payment for social security charges and taxes, and the creation of a national solidarity fund for the SMEs in various sectors, especially affected, such as restaurant, transportation, cultural sector, tourism and events. And the regional level and the metropolitan level have contributed to this national solidarity fund for their own SMEs. So you can see at the regional level, there has been a suspension of the payments and the rents, the creation of a 0% interest loan, and of course, this contribution to the National Solidarity Fund. On the metropolitan level, with the participation of the municipalities and the local stakeholder, we will see it later, there has been a suspension of the tourist and road taxes and also of the rents for the shops. The support for the cancelled events has been maintained, and there has been also liquidity facilities. More especially for the rural areas, there has been on-demand transport service created for the rural areas. The food markets have continued by derogation with some special regulations. A platform has been created for facilitating vouchers coming from in local shops, locked down by the regulation. And another platform has been created to connect the local producers to the supermarkets. So Grenoble-Alpes Métropole has been works usually with a lot of partners, such as all the diverse administrative levels, such as the state, region, department, and municipalities. But against the COVID, the university, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Chamber of Agriculture have been involved, such as the professionals in the affected sectors: tourism, food, culture, and events. A special crisis platform has been created to follow up the economic impacts and also the health impacts of the COVID. And we can wonder whether this special multi-governance will remain, or if we return to the business as usual. But this might have strengthened the relation between stakeholders and between the metropolitan area and the stakeholders. So almost as everywhere, the impact of the COVID crisis was very strong in the tourism sector and the sport, culture, and events. Considering the industry and public works, these have been less affected. But the question of the food market was quite complicated, and so it was restricted. And, but thanks to support and some regulation, it has been maintained, while the delivery and drive services have increased. Some previous policies linked with the rural maybe have contributed to a better preparation with a previous multi-level governance and partnerships with stakeholders in various sectors. So like in Guadalajara, for the food policy, there was an integrated approach with local partners, but also an agro-food cluster and inter-territorial partnerships with the surrounding territories. And you can see on the map natural parks and some communities around the metropolitan area. It is also the same for the tourism sector, with a territorial approach and a governance including the professionals. Of course, the transportation sector has a territorial approach with, for example, a urban delivery hub on one side, but a service on demand in remote areas on the other side, and the contribution of users and municipalities to the design of the services. The Metropolis is also empowered to act in the digital area. On the department level, so the department is responsible for the coverage of broadband, but the Metropole is in charge of facilitate the relations with municipalities, the private sector, and citizens. So we can wonder whether there will be an acceleration of these changes during or after the COVID-19 crisis, and these changes toward a more greener and local economy with a stronger multi-level governance. And actually, discussions are currently taken by our authorities about the creation of a conference on the revitalization of mountain tourism, which has been strongly affected. So with all the stakeholders, they are discussing also a plan to support the productive investment, fostering especially local and green production and consumption, and a plan to support the innovation, fostering the relocation of activities, because the high-tech sector is very strong in Grenoble, and the economic development policy has always been to support innovation. But here the idea is to foster more on the relocation of activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you. This is another interesting case. France is one of the countries with more culture and more tradition dealing with metropolitan areas and metropolitan management, governance, multi-level governance. And this was really great to know how different levels of government, local, metropolitan, regional, and even national are working together for addressing this situation. We are going from specific cases from metropolitan authorities for metropolitan areas to the global trends, to international trends. And precisely to show some international trends, some global trends, we have invited here to Metropolis, this worldwide network on metropolitan areas and major cities. And we are pleased to welcome Leah Brum, the officer of Metropolis in charge of the Metropolitan Observatory, that will share some data, some trends, some numbers with us. Please, Leah, welcome, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Rafa. Good day, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you, Gabriel and Mario, for your presentations, and also to the whole UN Habitat team for the invitation to bring Metropolis to this conversation. Let me see here how I have the screen speaker view and so on. Camilo, yes, perfect. That's good. Well, let's put it here. Good. So, as Rafael said, my name is Leah Brum, and I work for the World Association of the Major Metropolises, which I will shortly refer to here as Metropolis. Metropolis is also a common noun that we use a lot, so this sometimes generates a bit of confusion. But so that you know, during my speech here, whenever I mention the word metropolis, I will be mostly referring to the association and not a specific urban space. Well, I have to tell you that the moment that I got the invitation to take part in this webinar, having read its guiding questions, apart of course of being flattered to take part in this conversation, I wanted to make really clear to the organizers that I wouldn't be able to provide sharp answers of a given metropolitan area. Something that fortunately, I think our colleagues from Guadalajara and Grenoble-Alpes marvelously did, but that I would rather be trying to bring some insights about global trends and metropolitan perspectives in such uncertain times that we are living now, based mostly on the experience and the information that we managed to gather so far about our membership. And this is why I put the word hints in bold here in the title of my presentation, because as an association, we're mostly trying to find common answers to the challenges of the metropolization of the world, which I think it's already a challenge in itself. The next. So continuing to make this clear, I'm here speaking on behalf of 138 subnational government authorities, which are responsible, at least to a certain extent, of managing some of the largest and densest urban areas of the world. So you wouldn't expect me to demonstrate deep knowledge. I'm just humbly trying to connect dots of a very complex metropolitan world. And what you see here is a simple snapshot from the Metropolis website. And it's just to give you an idea of where our members are located and how they are spread. If you visit our website and click on these dots, you will find, let's go to the next. You will find that these dots are the 138 governments are 100%, 11% of them are metropolitan authorities, but there are also governments of provinces and regions and city governments, many of which are governments of metropolitan cities, which make actually the bulk of our membership. Most of our members are city governments. Of course, there is a huge debate on what defines a metropolitan city, and we're not getting necessarily into it now. But for operational matters, Metropolis works mostly with urban areas with a population from at least 1 million inhabitants, and up to the most densely populated ones, for instance, Jakarta, São Paulo, Istanbul, and many others. And coincidentally, well, these are the places which are being hit harder by the pandemic. Well, exactly because of this demographic concentration and or density. I myself am located in Barcelona. I'm talking to you from home, where the whole team of this Metropolis Secretariat General is based. Metropolis does not count on any other exclusively dedicated office elsewhere, but it does count on the invaluable support and collaboration of very much engaged and passionate people. And these people are the public officials of the administrations that are of our membership, as well as their political representatives. So the next slide goes to early March this year. Well, we are facing a few days actually before the World Health Organization announced that the COVID-19 as a pandemic. We started receiving a growing number of requests from these public officials, from our members, eager to know what their fellow governments in other parts of the planet were doing to respond to such an unprecedented challenge, and sharing the communication about their immediate responses and the strategies that they were putting in place and so on. So we were starting to receive this documentation and information and wanting to facilitate this exchange. So in about a couple of weeks, could you move to the next, please? Metropolis teamed up with the Euro-Latin American Alliance of Cooperation Among Cities, which is a network mostly, well, yes, known as ALAS, that works mostly with the big cities in Latin America and in Europe. And we managed to put together this website, citiesforglobalhealth.org, which has quite of a simple structure. It's open to any local government in the world of any level to share their response to this and other emergencies, to the COVID-19 and other emergencies. Back then, I guess we were not fully aware of the magnitude of the pandemic itself. So we really wanted to get together the documentation about previous health emergencies. So the next comes to what we have, next slide. What we have today at citiesforglobalhealth.org. 98% of the 453 initiatives that have been uploaded are responses to the COVID-19 outbreak. And this willingness to share, because they were all voluntarily uploaded by public officials of local governments across the world. And we were quite impressed with this level of response that we received. And for us, it means somehow, it indicates a form of cooperation and complementarity between networks of subnational authorities that we had never seen before, actually. So we started receiving also support from the United Cities and Local Governments, ICLEI, C40, the International Union on Transportation, the Global Resilient Cities Network, and well, just to name a few. We are receiving the support and all these networks that sometimes we have the feeling that we are not working very much in a coordinated way. We are all got together to promote this initiative, to open this channel for local governments to share their responses. So in the next slide, I will move to actually the assignment of this webinar. How can we find the urban-rural links in these 453 responses? Unfortunately, I haven't been able to go as deep into the analysis as I had hoped for, but as I said here, I share some hints, which are basically my own thoughts about some next steps of the work that Metropolis could carry out. And as the number of initiatives is rising, I think we need to start getting a sense of what these numbers mean. And what I actually initially saw from all these initiatives, browsing through them, I realized that just like in the Metropolis membership, the vast majority of the initiatives has been uploaded by city governments. And from all of these governments, I identified 61 initiatives because they are the ones led by cities in peripheral areas of the metropolitan territories where there is a member of Metropolis. Many of them are related to food supply, water supply, something that Mario mentioned in his presentation, waste management, mobility, security, and also gender violence policies, gender policies to tackle gender-based violence, among other topics. So, and these initiatives, they are taking place, if we go to the next slide, they are taking place specifically and just a few metropolitan areas, metropolitan territories. Of course, I have the data of the members that we work with. So this is, these are the metropolitan areas that we can see that there could be some dialogue being fostered between peripheral cities and also fringe areas of these urban territories. So Barcelona, Busan, Istanbul, Greater Paris, and Bogota have been assessed previously by Metropolis and the system of metropolitan indicators that we have developed and launched last year as examples of metropolitan territories with a greater level of metropolitan coordination, meaning that there is some type of government authorities that puts together all cities and different city governments to work together to provide public services. And also there's the case of Buenos Aires and Rio de Janeiro, in which we have initiatives from peripheral cities whose profile traditionally there is not such a metropolitan coordination entity. So in Metropolis, we do have a statement, and this is something that inspired us to launch this platform, which is on the next slide, which is, we're trying to connect the dots and find the common answers to challenges of metropolization, even though we know that the solutions are definitely not suitable to every context. However, we firmly believe that no solution will be found without collaboration. And in the end of the day, I guess this is what this crisis is requesting us all in every level. Leadership combined with solidarity. As it is happening with individual neighbors, helping out each other, as we have seen with the collaboration of different global alliances, and the openness, and even this openness to dialogue, the fact that we are talking here and sharing our ideas in this webinar, and the willingness from UN agencies to collaborate with a vast array of stakeholders. I strongly believe that we should facilitate the dialogue and joint work of the local authorities, which are at the forefront of the pandemic, in the fringes of their territories that are working with the food supply and the waste management to ensure the safe management of public spaces, the quality of environmental services, and so on. And I get to the end of my presentation. My last slide is actually a picture from 35 years ago, when these guys in the pictures, they are, among them are the governors of Abidjan, Cairo, Los Angeles, Tokyo, New York. They first got together, driven by the need to get to exchange their ideas on something that they did not know how to fully manage, which was the growth of their own cities. And I see that 35 years later, at least I can say, well, at least a few women leaders joined this table, although they are still a minority. Just 24 of our members are led by women, but that we need to rethink all of our activities. Many of the activities of Metropolis have been face-to-face meetings and congresses and workshops for public officials. Now we are rethinking our whole operations. But I think that what drives us most is this willingness to open dialogues, especially in our metropolitan spaces. And I think this is what really drives me to be here, and all my colleagues who are working in Metropolis, is to foster this cooperation and mostly share our questions. I felt really inspired by the examples shared by Grenoble-Alpes and Guadalajara, and I would also invite them to join the platform Cities for Global Health, and I would be happy also to hear your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah. These are important insights and also numbers, figures of international trends from the partners that you have, the cities and metropolis associated to your organization. Speaking about Metropolis, I would like to encourage you all to check at the Metropolis webpage, because I think that there are some important materials, and also the indicators that Leah just mentioned are very important information and data to look at these international trends. Speaking about international trends, we are happy to say that we have participants from Bolivia, Peru, Mexico, Colombia, Nepal, South Africa, Kenya, Rwanda, Nigeria, Syria, France, also colleagues from UN Habitat in another countries and locations. Thank you for joining to this webinar. Italy, Lebanon, please. People are reporting their location. Please go ahead and tell us where are you listen these interesting presentations. I would like to give the floor to our discussants, no more than 5 minutes, please, in order to tell us about the importance of these presentations for this pandemic situation, and also to bring another insights and another ideas from your organizations. I would like to start with Mr. Edmundo Huerna, a senior level urbanist from the International Labour Organization, the ILO. ILO is one of the UN agencies that was from the beginning of this urban rural linkages path, and which have helped us to elaborate the guiding principles and the another initiatives around its subject. So please, Edmundo, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Rafa, Edmundo is not present, so we can just continue with the next discussant.
Okay, thank you, Camilo. So the next discussion would be Juan David Palacio. Juan David. Our next discussant, Juan David Palacio, from the Metropolitan area of Valle de Aburrá, Medellín, Colombia. This is an important metropolitan in Colombia, but also in Latin America. Is I will say an inspiring practice on metropolitan management. They have more than 40 years, I think, almost 40 years dealing with metropolitan subjects in Medellin. So for the speech of Juan David, we will have an interpreter. We will have Oliver Hillett from the. We will have an interpreter. So please go ahead, Juan David, with your speech.
Buenos días. Buenos días, ¿me escuchan? Buenos días, mi nombre es Juan David Palacio, yo soy el nuevo director del área metropolitana del Valle de Aburrá. En estos momentos nos encontramos en un perímetro urbano, precisamente en una reserva. Estamos haciendo una liberación de unas zarigüeyas y otras especies que sufren en este territorio. Quiero agradecerles el espacio que me proporcionan de manera generosa desde el área metropolitana del Valle de Aburrá, un área donde se encuentran integrados alrededor de 3.600.000 habitantes, un perímetro urbano donde el 91% de la población reside en esta zona urbana. Implica que tengamos que tener unos ejercicios de articulación y de gobernanza entre la zona urbana y la zona rural. Este ejercicio de la zona urbana y zona rural en época de pandemia nos ha demostrado la importancia de tener que trabajar conectados. La zona rural, que muy poco nos distancia de la zona urbana, es una zona en la cual nosotros nos hemos concentrado para trabajar de manera articulada, y elementos o herramientas como son el PMOP se han construido desde esta área metropolitana con el propósito de que sean garantía para la sostenibilidad de la biodiversidad. En nuestro ejercicio venimos trabajando para que la zona rural sea fuente alimentaria y despensa de este perímetro urbano, y en este ejercicio de articulación nos demuestra hoy, precisamente cuando estamos padeciendo la pandemia, cómo tenemos que trabajar los perímetros urbanos y los perímetros rurales de manera articulada, con el propósito de garantizar no solo la sostenibilidad, sino también como instrumento de garantía de la biodiversidad.
Gracias, Juan David. Definitivamente ideas muy interesantes. Déjame darle la palabra a nuestro intérprete. Oliver, are you there for the translation?
Yes, Rafael, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Oliver, please.
I must confess that I was unprepared to the flow of very strategic information that Juan David has shared with us. And I believe and I hope that you have recorded that, because I have received from him some different text. I've taken some notes, and I'd like to say that Juan David, as the director of the Metropolitan Authority of Valle de la Burra, which includes the city of Medellin, has greeted us from a green protected area near in his area, where he was about to witness the freeing of some animals. And he reminded us that the metropolitan area, which is composed of 10 municipalities, which have quite good level of institutional and political articulation, hosts about 3,600,000 inhabitants.
Yes,
91% urban. And his main effort has to be to clarify that the metropolitan area has been working on a very similar land use plan to the one that we witnessed from Guadalajara. And that allows him to respond to the particular human health, nature, and urban development situations that occur in the Valle de la Burra. I did not take too many of the other details, and as I said, I hope that this can be recorded for greater precision in the richness of the information that he shared with us. But I can witness that the area has done some tremendous progress in terms of figuring out how ecosystems and human health, particularly also related to control of pollution and the facilitation of access to urban inhabitants to green areas. So they have produced a declaration of Medellin and Valle de Aburrá about the importance of biodiversity. And this includes a lot of references to human health. So I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you. Thank you, Juan David. Juan David, muchas gracias por tu tiempo. Hubiéramos querido tenerte más minutos acá en el webinar. Sabemos que estás allá en terreno, estás precisamente lidiando con estos vínculos urbanos-rurales. Si quieres de pronto dejar una idea final antes de despedirte, adelante, bienvenida. Creo que no te escuchamos, Juan David. Tal vez estamos teniendo problemas con el audio. Well, Juan David just go, but he left us an important message. Precisely, he was in the field leading with these urban-rural linkages. I think that this is a great opportunity to know from first person how metropolitan authorities are trying to strengthen this relation between urban and rural territories. And in this case of the metropolitan area of Valle de Aburrá, he was working on protecting the fauna and the flora in their metropolis. So this was a great example. Thank you, Oliver, also for the translation. I think we have now the ILO. So please go ahead with your intervention.
Edmundo Berna, you can go ahead.
Edmundo, are you there? Can you listen us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, so good afternoon. I'm not too far from you geographically. I'm talking from Maputo in Mozambique, but not because of the country. With due respect, there were many difficulties to connect. So unfortunately, I missed the presentations and I cannot refer too much about them. But what in a few minutes that, I'm supposed to be, to comment, but I honestly cannot comment on these, the presentation. But what I've seen is that I took note that at least the ones that were mentioned in the folder, they are from the north. Being Mexico also more north than south. The other ones, well, I think that the from Grenoble, and these are the ones that I have. But so I'm here in Maputo and I'm experiencing in the field lots of the challenges regarding the rural-urban linkages inside the metropolitan areas in times of COVID. There is a lot of urban agriculture in Maputo, and the peri-urban agriculture. Well, there are, of course, linkages within the metropolitan area. There are some 4 million people in the metropolitan area and a lot of empty land. So there are urban-rural linkages. In a way, the producers are producing more because there have been extremely harsh restrictions on transport. There are a lot of food that comes to Maputo comes from South Africa, believe it or not. And now, in a way, ironically, the local producers, they can produce more and sell more because of the situation of the crisis. Well, this is good news, let's say, within a situation of a disaster, of a very bad news. But of course, things are very much restricted and very much controlled. There are not yet many cases in the Maputo area and also in the country. At the same time, testing is very limited, so nobody knows exactly what is going on. The government, both metropolitan government and the central government are making a lot of...
Con la mamá coordina.
Well, there is somebody else talking.
Yes.
Should I continue?
Yes, please. Those who are not talking, please unmute your mix. Thank you. Edmundo, go ahead.
Yes, so as I was saying, the metropolitan government and as well as the central government are making a lot of effort to contain the pandemic in terms of as I said, the rural areas of the metropolitan area, they are in a way thriving. One policy that the municipal government did was to get rid, was to change informal sellers of food from, I was going to say get rid, but they didn't get rid of the sellers, of course. They put them in special zones to make it, let's say, more protected. That is the discourse of the government, because they were afraid that the street vending would be a way to proliferate the virus. So now the street vendors are in specific areas. Well, in a few minutes, that's what I can say from not listening from the presentations, unfortunately for me, but then at least I have the opportunity to share a little bit with you what is happening in a metropolitan area in the south, in Maputo, in Mozambique. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you, Edmundo. So I would like to give the floor to our last discussant, Mr. Firdaus Osidhum. I don't know if I am pronouncing right. Please, apologies. Firdaus joined us from the UCLG, United Cities and Local Government. So please, Firdaus, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rafael, Mrs. I know the name is always confusing, but yeah. So thank you for giving me the floor. I think the discussions are going in a very interesting pattern. I would like to recall our section's intervention from Leah, where she was talking about the strength of collaboration, working together as being, you know, for us, like the biggest result of what we have been listening from the local governments. Would they be from Metropolis or other sizes? I think what is very important also, and for us is also at stake, is that, and Octavi, the Secretary General of Metropolis, was saying it the other day, is that we have been thinking of Metropolis like being the only or the best, the most efficient way of generating a most efficient management, more sustainable. And today it is showing the other side of it, the risk for a facility of contagion, difficulty in its management in this kind of pandemics. So this develops new ways and new perspectives on the metropolis that makes at stake its relationship with the rural side. I think it is very important that since the metropolis have been a solution for generating prosperity, and they are still, I think it is time for Metropolis to have a look of new ways to generate richness and prosperity that will be more in accord with, more in harmony with their natural environments, maybe allowing the rural side to enter the city and take a more prominent place in the life of the city. But anyway, I think it is a very important moment we are living now, in the sense of generating new paradigms and the sense of generating new models of development. From our side, we can, what we have heard in our life learning experiences, the webinars we are having each week, local governments and their citizens are not ready anymore to put some values and qualitative forms of life, of living at stake. And this is quite positive. It is very important. In UCLG, we have been pushing, and we are thinking of the aftermath in those life learning experiences, and they are organized actually in partnership with UN Habitat. They are inaugurated each time by Maimouna Moucharif, the ED. But I think the most important today is to understand the fact that there is a before and there is an after, and the pandemic has shown that the management and needs really, and is asking us to make new paradigms emerge and raise new models for food systems and for a more sustainable interactivity with the rural side, and not only consumption. I would stop here for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Frida. Thank you. Thank you. And we are very glad to have here UCLG, Metropolis among our discussants and speakers, because this partnership with local governments, associations are very important, not only to know the specific cases as we we heard about, of course, important cases in Guadalajara, in Grenoble-Alpes, but we will look also for international and metropolitan trends, international trends to try to distill some lessons and to give the participants some ideas on how to address this situation, which is so specific, so unexpected. So thank you for your time, and to all our discussants. I would like to close this panel with an only general question for our three speakers, and the question is related with institutions. During these times, we have seen and heard from you that some mitigation measures have emerged and quickly, and are quickly emerging, and but mostly of them are informal for now. Until now, they are informal. How do you think that these measures can be institutionalized, for say, in that way, to become formal, this mitigation measure, how to transit from informal to formal institutions for dealing with these urban-rural linkages, and also highlighting this kind of crisis, not only health crisis like this pandemic, but also another crisis. I mean, climate change. We have important migration dynamics between urban, rural territories among metropolitan areas worldwide. So I would like to you give us some insights about how to informal measures can become formal. I will give the floor to Leah for a start to give us some insight about it. Please, Leah, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Insights, and I'd say guessing. I think that when there is a certain level, any type of metropolitan coordination framework, this helps. This already helps a bit to enhance this dialogue and cooperation. But it doesn't mean necessarily that we need to have a metropolitan government itself, just as the cases that we have in France are very emblematic. We have metropolitan authorities well consolidated. But what we can see, I think, especially in terms, in contexts where national governments are not responding, and this is happening with some of our members are communicating a lot with us and asking to connect. I just can bring now about from my memory the cases of city governments in Brazil, where the national government hasn't been able to give a single orientation to citizens, and that local governments are taking the lead on that. So it's this dialogue that I think that it can be fostered. It's in this way with institutions that we have. I don't believe that we need to create necessarily new institutions or enhance bureaucracy. I mean, it's not for the sake of that. It's for the sake of better coordination of work and resources in the end of the day. So, well, it's a matter of also negotiating. The Secretary General of Metropolis usually says that metropolitan governance is about generosity, because there are different institutions operating in the shared territory, and they would need to, let's say, give away some type of power or some type of resources. But it's an understanding that it's for the common good and well-being of this entire population that is commuting, that it's living on the peripheries and going back and forth to the central areas and so on.
Thank you, Leah. That is a great insight. Not more institutions, not more bureaucracy is needed, but maybe to involve new actors to the already existing institutions. And thank you for that word, generosity, which is, I think, that word and that principle is at the core of not only metropolitan areas, but also territorial management. So please, Mario, from Guadalajara, some insights, some ideas about this, and also how to involve citizens. The metropolitan scale is a not easy scale for citizen representation in Latin America. So how to improve these metropolitan citizens And what are you doing from Guadalajara to do that?
Thank you. Well, actually, it is complicated to figure out how is the best way to represent the many different interests around the metropolis, neighbors, NGOs, civil society. In our case, actually the next Wednesday, we want to have the meeting of the Metropolitan Board of Mayors and the Governor. And in this board, the Citizen Metropolitan Council participates, and the recommendations are mandatory for the rest of the metropolitan entities. Actually, they are preparing a special communication related with the actions about COVID-19. One of them is about health, other one is about security, public security in the city. And the final one is about urban mobility and the strategy, for instance, for temporary bike lines, the measures of public transportation. And well, I think in terms of formal mechanisms and structures, we have this important space of public participation. But what happened with the rest of the people that lives in the metropolis? Particularly people from rural areas, because during this pandemic, they don't have possibilities to participate because they don't have access to internet. They can participate in a public audience through Zoom or through other kind of platform. We are working on that now, not just for COVID-19. During the next 3 or almost 4 months, we're gonna consult our plan about climate change. So we are waiting after this Friday, because the next Friday our governor announced the measures and the next steps about COVID in the state and also in the metropolis. And after that, we're gonna work with these communities. We have actually in IMEPLAN, in our institution, some special program called Route 2042, because in this year, the city of Guadalajara has 500 years of that was founded. So through this Route 2042, we're going to these rural and semi-urban communities that they don't have access to participate, not just for the internet issue, because they live on a day, they need to other kind of support or public policies, and obviously it's not affordable for them to be participating in formal or even in informal spaces. So I think those two mechanisms, the formal and this special program, are some ways to connect with people during this pandemic and after the pandemic.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you. Those are great insights as well. We are closing the webinar. We have maybe 5 or 10 more minutes. I would like the floor to answer the questions to the 2 final participants. First, Mr. Wilson Kayom, urban planning specialist from Uganda. Mr. Wilson, please go ahead with your insights.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are hearing you. Please go ahead.
Okay. Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Rafael, Camilo, Remy, and everyone, and UN Habitat as a whole. I've listened attentively to the speakers, like Mario from Guadalajara, and I want to say that as a way of proposing strategies, how we can, formalize some of those initiatives that have already been that are being pursued by different metropolitan authorities. I think one way that I want to propose that we need to strengthen, the frameworks. We need to strengthen the frameworks, the standards that we have, and then perhaps also the legal systems, the legal regimes. Because I think there is no, like somebody said, we don't need to create perhaps more institutions, but I think it is more to do with strengthening the standards that we have. Like, for example, if you look at the health service delivery, new initiatives have come up as a result of this, COVID pandemic. And you realize, like, for example, in Uganda, as of yesterday, we registered our total number of COVID cases is 139, and we have so far registered 0 deaths. But we are not over celebrating. We are not over celebrating because we are still taming the pandemic. So I want to say that yes, many people have moved to the rural areas. Like we have listened for the case of Guadalajara. There are people who have gone to the rural areas, but whether staying in the rural areas is the way to go, I think that is a matter that we still need to continue discussing. So I want to stop by saying that we just have to strengthen the frameworks that are already in place. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Cayón. That is a good insight. The frameworks are already settled. So let's use it and let's improve it. I just received by chat, I think all of you can see it now in the chat of the webinar, a message from Juan David, the General Director of the Metropolitan Area of Valle de Aburrá. He's in the field, as you see before, but he is continue to listen us, and he just shared the link to the Aburrá Valley Declaration on the role of biodiversity and in the post-2020. I would like to invite you to download the declaration. The link is in the chat. So thank you, Juan David, for continuing to listen us from the field, and also for continuing to give us your insights and this important material. I would like to close the panel with Gabriel. Gabriel, you have only 1 or 2 minutes maximum, sorry, but we need to close now. Please, Gabriel, go ahead, and then I will give the floor to Mr. Remy Setchipinaguer for the final remarks. Gabriel, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So to react about the institutionalization, I was about to say almost exactly the same thing as Leah. That is to say, we don't really need to institutionalize. Informal also works very well. And about the citizen participation. So the citizen participation to the decisions and politics of the metropole is quite low if we consider it in general. We have a development council which is supposed to represent citizens, but in general there are more civil society organizations and stakeholders rather than citizens. But if we consider specific projects and policies such as housing policies, or even with the smart city policies, then there are some way to develop a better approach with the citizen participation. And considering the measures against COVID-19, I believe that the citizens have been kept away from the deciding procedures.
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you. I think that all of you agreed in a general takeaway, which is we already have institutions, we already have some bureaucracy installed, we already have the framework. So let's improve the framework. Let's take more advantages of the institutions already settled to to address this kind of crisis. But this is only one takeaway. I would like to thank you all. We still have 154 participants all over the world listen us after 1.5 hours. I think this is a great signal for the importance of this relation between urban-rural linkages and metropolises. So I will give the floor to Mr. Remy Chipping from UN Habitat to close the meeting and to give us some final remarks and additional takeaways from these interesting speakers and discussions we have today. Remy, the floor is all yours, and thank you all again.
Thank you, Rafa. I hope you can hear me. A very exciting session, which was a great opportunity to learn. I will not recap everything, but just a few things that caught my eye. That from the perspective of the presenters, the discussion, it appears to me that perhaps COVID-19 will be won or lost in metropolitan areas. So that really brings out the role of metropolitan areas in managing the crisis. The other thing that was confirmed here is that rural, peri-urban areas are very much linked to metropolitan areas when it comes to food supply, sustaining people in urban metropolitan areas. So this was a good confirmation again. That metropolitan authorities in any form or ways are leading the way in managing the COVID-19, while some of the features that are coming out in that leading role is the importance of subsidiarity and solidarity with people and places, including peri-urban or peri-metropolitan areas and rural areas. They are also underscore that the sustainable and promising responses are emerging, either in terms of employment, social security and safety nets, jobs, transport, food, like relief packages, as we have heard in the case of Botswana. Partnership is important. We heard a lot the case of multi-level governance, how it can help strengthen that collaboration, the importance of dialogue. So all these elements are ingredients that will make us all resilient. There was a clear link between health and food, which is essential for sustainable development. And in the case of COVID, it becomes really, really indispensable that we should not overlook this dimension. The connection again between people and places was highlighted, and the use of innovation and information communication technology tools to provide new solutions, to provide facilities, to create platforms that we have heard, to connect people, places, again, urban and rural, wherever they are. It also emerged that it's important to look at the data, the monitoring system, that without knowing, for instance, the numbers that are being tested, cases that are unrecorded, then we have to be more, you have to address this with a certain level of uncertainty. And the system that can address uncertainty will become more resilient. It became also clear that the convergence between health, food, biodiversity, climate, and urban rural linkages were very much on the table. The COVID-19 is also providing some opportunities, as we just heard, strengthening existing institutions, creating a sense of solidarity, accelerating the service delivery to deprived neighborhoods or areas in metropolitan areas like in South Africa. The health becoming at time more important than economy. So that brings again the purpose of us living really at the essential reason for us being, being here in cities, in the metropolitan area, that health matters. We heard about the before and the after, so taking that elements of the after is important that we consider how we scale up, how we prioritize metropolitan health issues in our intervention, and that by doing so, how do we keep in mind the resilience of our effort? We also heard that moving forward, really critical that we foster collaboration, joint work, that we work with relevant stakeholders to address this pandemic. No real impact will be achieved by a single stakeholder. It was very clear that there was a strong link between what is health, food, nutrition, governance, governance, institutions, places, and in the context of health. So health start bringing all these elements together, that it becomes indispensable to really look through these connections from the lens of health. So again, I thank you all. I think it was very rich, very diverse. You contributed as speaker, as discussant through the chat, and they have been very helpful. I will now ask my colleague Camilo to tell us what's next. And again, thank you, and we meet again soon. Camilo, it's all yours. And Rafa.
Thank you, Remy. I will take on Rafa. Just to, we'd like to thank you all for participating in this webinar session again. We will share with you the recording and proceeding of the webinar in the coming days. Also, I would like to announce that we are going to have the next session of this webinar series, Urban Linkages in the Time of COVID-19. This will take place next Thursday, May the 21st. And yeah, you will receive also the registration link for this webinar. For this session, we would like to put small and intermediate cities into the focus, also drawing the linkages with urban rail linkages. Yeah, that's it, and thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Take care and see you.
Bye-bye.